Born and raised in Germany's legendary Black Forest, Scott Sunderwald has lived a life deeply connected to the wild. From the German Forestry Service to wilderness education in BC and Saskatchewan, Scott's passion for bushcraft, survival, and storytelling has shaped a career devoted to the outdoors. For the past 17 years, he's called Alberta's rugged Northern Rockies home, working with Alberta Parks and living the lessons he teaches. He's also the author of Radically Wild, True Tales of Adventure, Wilderness Survival, and Hard Lessons. His book is out now, and I can honestly say it's one of the best books I've read in a long time. What I really loved about getting to hang out with you, and I will say that as we talk to people in and around the Hinton area, your name did pop up quite a bit. So you're a little bit of a local legend, but you probably already know that. But I think one thing about what you do and why you're so successful at it is you make it very approachable. You make, being in the wilderness and stuff. It's, some people, it's a secretive thing. And it's like, this is my thing. You seem very welcoming to the idea. Is that how you've always approached kind of teaching people about the wilderness?
Well, that's an interesting question because actually, and in my book, you'll find most of my upbringing, it was quite secretive. And I think what happened was as you get older, you think life goes by pretty fast. If I don't pass on these stories and these skills, they're just going to go to the grave with me. So there has been a shift in my life. I think for the first half of my life, I lived this secret kind of wilderness hermit type of lifestyle. And mostly because people, A, they wouldn't understand, B, they might think I'm a bit too weird, this sort of thing. And, I think there's a whole new trend now with people rewilding and trying to get back to nature and foraging and hunting and fishing. And so I think the timing is right. It's the right zeitgeist, if you will, to be out there promoting wilderness skills and wilderness lifestyle. And there's a huge appetite for that right now worldwide. Bushcraft. I remember when I was young, people didn't even know what the term is. And now everything is bushcraft, bushcraft knives, bushcraft axes, bushcraft clothing, bushcraft shelters, and it's kind of cool to see these things becoming more mainstream.
Yeah. Actually, let's unpack both of those words. Let's start with bushcraft. Just define that for us.
Yeah. So in the old days, we used to call these skills more wilderness survival, and everything was wilderness survival, right? You had all these survivor shows and Survivor Man, and then bushcraft became more mainstream, and people still wrestle with what's the difference between those two. Mm-hmm. If you've ever done true survival, it's a lot of suffering. It's you're trying to get out alive. You're freezing your ass off, getting eaten by bugs. You're just hoping to get rescued and get home. That's kind of wilderness survival. Bushcraft, on the other hand, is learning to thrive in the wilderness. So you move from surviving to thriving. Okay. And so it adopts a lot of ancient technology, stuff that your ancestors, my ancestors knew for thousands of years, but also modern technology like bushcraft will adopt GPS and modern knives and steel and that sort of thing. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of technologies and understanding of how to live off the land, but it moves beyond just staying alive. So in bushcraft, you might sit down and weave a willow basket, for example, right?
Right.
Which if you're on a survival trip just trying to get home, you're not going to spend 8 hours weaving willows. It'd be a waste of energy, right?
Yeah. And then the other word that you used, and I was curious about, is rewilding. Maybe talk about what that means to you or to anybody.
Yeah, it's an interesting term because if you Google it, you're going to get a few different definitions. For some people, rewilding means sort of a conservation thing, turning parts of the land back to wilderness. So Europe is big right now, rewilding, trying to bring wolves back in certain places, or the European lynx, for example, and they'll call that rewilding. I think the North American term focuses more on human rewilding and getting us back in touch with our roots, our nature, our living off the land. And it harkens back to foraging for edible medicinal plants, mushrooms, maybe learning how to fish again, how to hunt, how to feed yourself, how to build a shelter and a fire, and those rewilding skills that were just part of human nature for our whole existence.
Right. What I found interesting about that word was it almost reminded me of the term rehabilitation, right? So you're kind of bringing someone back to a state that they were. But one of the things I remember watching a documentary once, and this prisoner, when he was talking about being rehabilitated, he said, "I've never lived like that, so you can't rehabilitate me." I don't know if the term would be to habilitate, but when you're thinking about like rewilding someone, a lot of people have lived in cities their whole lives, and
Mhm.
so it's kind of like you're not reteaching them these tools. These are tools that you're teaching people for the first time that maybe their ancestors, 20 generations have done. But, you're really teaching these people these skills for the first time for the most part. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would agree with that. What you will notice, though, very quickly when you get people into wilderness situations is instincts kick in that they never knew they had. Like
Yeah.
I took a fellow out a few weeks ago, and we were at the peak of the wild mushroom season here, and I forage for wild mushrooms my whole life. Love it. They're tasty. They're wonderful. And this guy didn't know one mushroom from a rock. Like he had no clue. And I told him to smell the mushroom, and I said, what are your instincts telling you? He said, I don't like the smell. I said, bingo, this is a poisonous mushroom. So here's a guy who's never touched this thing, but something in his instinct knew this is not good to eat. And I've noticed that with whether it's edible plants, mushrooms, hunting, fishing. You get out there, and the wild you starts coming to life, right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing with feral critters. You get a pig that's raised in a barn, you release that pig in the wild, that thing's going to turn back into a wild boar in a few generations. It doesn't take long, and you become what you were. And humans we're much the same. We just need the opportunity to rewild.
Yeah. And I think that I think should be comforting for people to know that it doesn't matter if you've never experienced a wilderness, that it's something that it does feel natural very quickly, and it's something that you don't have to have grown up with it. It's once you experience it, there's a part of you that is drawn to it.
Yeah. And I mean, why is it that we love the forest and the fresh air and a waterfall and northern lights and a starry sky? Like there's something deep within us. It's instinctual, it's philosophical, it's spiritual, but we we all love it. You're not taught to love a sunset. You see a sunset, you just instinctually love it. I don't think instinctually we love concrete jungle and traffic jams and car horns and things like that. So, I just think the more we can get people in touch with nature, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about the book. So Radically Wild, where did the idea of the book come from? Was it something that you were thinking of, or is it something that someone approached you about?
There it is.
Love it.
Um, yeah, so I only have 6 children. That's the best we could do for our family. And they would sit in their pajamas. I'd tell them bedtime stories, and so often it was just going back in my memory to my growing up years. I was born and raised in Germany, grew up in the Black Forest, very sort of Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer upbringing, living off the land, foraging, dodging dangerous wild boars, and this sort of thing. And I would tell these stories every night, and I was shocked at how many stories I had. And then I thought, maybe I should write these down before I get hit by a bus or fall off a cliff rock climbing. I wish I had more stories from my grandfather, for example. And
Mhm.
so I started writing, and then I thought, maybe this is more than just a project for my kids. Maybe this could inspire a new generation of wilderness people. And so it took a long time, over 10 years, because I have a
Oh,
full-time
wow.
job, busy life, and I would chip away at this evenings and weekends, and finally got the damn thing written, and now it's out. So that was kind of the history behind it.
So the premise. Oh, so I guess the inspiration was I want to share these with my family, it becomes a bigger scope. And are they all, is it kind of just a compilation of shorter stories and situations you found yourself in throughout your life?
Yeah, it's if you could take a memoir and campfire stories and marry them together and they would have a child, that would be my book. So
Nice.
each chapter kind of stands alone as its own mini adventure, but there's a narrative, sort of a coming of age. There's a lot of hard lessons learned. Every chapter ends with lessons learned. And, I grew up before the internet, before there were even really good books on bushcraft and survival. So I learned all this stuff the hard way. And most of that was by making mistakes. My body's covered in scars. I've almost died more times than I can count. Everything from freezing to death to bears and boars and lightning strikes and drowning and poisoning, you name it. So I should have died 100 times over. I'm still here, but all those lessons are wrapped up in a humble way of things that, as they say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I think that's a major theme in this book.
So do your kids, when you tell these stories to them before they go to bed, have a hard time sleeping? I'm picturing, here's a way that I almost died once. They're just kind of like, okay, cool,
Yeah.
thanks, Dad.
Uh, I think they mostly just laugh at it, and they're all adults now, and
Yeah.
they're working in forestry and wildfire, and they love to hunt and fish and rock climb. So it's interesting to see how that sort of passed on to them now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I love that. So in terms of the process of writing the book, so how do you, because I think there's a lot of people who just be curious just in terms of, so you compile all these stories, from editing to publishing to promoting, like what's the process there?
Yeah, well, huge learning curve for me, right? I dove into the deep end, no clue really what I was doing. I love telling stories, so writing wasn't the hard part. That was probably the easy part, but the publishing world is tricky, and I learned very quickly that you have to court publishing agents and they have to like the theme. It was tricky to find anyone in modern publishing that wanted to pick up a book with hunting and fishing and foraging. It didn't fit the narrative for a lot of modern books, so I kind of went the self-publishing route, got in touch with Friesen Press. Little shout out to them. They're a Canadian company. They've been fantastic and helped me get the book done with editing and the cover. But I'm still sort of bumbling my way through this whole publishing world and getting it on Amazon and Kindle and Kobo and all these big networks around the world. But people are picking it up in Europe now, in yeah, actually the United States, all over the world. I've had people contact me and they've got the book in their hands. So that's kind of exciting.
That's really cool. Um, when you started, I guess 10 years ago, how close is the final vision when you look at it? Like you have a physical copy there with you. How close is the final vision, or final product to your initial vision of what you thought it could be?
I think the vision is stayed pretty much the same. It's this whole desire to get people turned on to the great outdoors, and to inspire them. What was tough for me was weeding through the stories. The final book is probably a third of the original adventures that I wrote, and I just had to take it to the cutting floor and chop, 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 and that was really painful because it was like, oh, this is a good story where a
Yeah.
muskrat attacked my leg, and but it's got to go. I just got way too many stories. So people have asked me if there's another book down the road, maybe some unfinished tales. My hope is, I'm not dead yet. I hope some of the best stories of my life are still ahead of me, and I
Yeah.
continue to do this wilderness adventure lifestyle. That's what I do on the weekends. I'm out in the back country, ideally without a tent, sleeping by a fire and cooking something on a stick, a rabbit, a grouse, and I hunt for my food and forage for my food and rock climb. So yeah, hopefully there's still many more adventures ahead. I
That's
don't want to
awesome.
die in an old folks home. I'd rather go out with my boots on.
Die in the, no, I'm not even gonna say it. Okay, so I want to kind of, talk a little bit about your journey. So you mentioned you were born and raised in the Black Forest of Germany. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So maybe just describe, you call yourself, you were born a wild child. So describe childhood in Germany in the Black Forest.
Yeah. Have you ever been to the Black Forest?
Well, okay, here's a weird thing. When I was a kid, a teenager, I was in, there's a town called Tegernsee. Do you know where that is?
Yeah.
Uh, where is that relative to the Black Forest?
It's not that far from there if you're meaning Titisee, which is probably what
Probably.
you're, yeah, saying. And so the Black Forest, for those who haven't been there, it's rolling hills, small mountainous area, and it looks like you step back into the dark ages there, like these little villages, these feudal system villages over the hills. There's castles hidden in the trees. Some of them are not even known by tourists. There's bunkers from past wars and canyons and waterfalls. So for a nature freak like me, this was paradise. And every minute that I wasn't in school, I was out in the bush, like evenings, weekends, and sometimes playing hooky too. But I learned to live off the land. My buddy and I, we would head out for days on end, and we kept pushing ourselves to new extremes. So right from day one, when we were 12 years old, we decided flashlights are for wimps, tents are for weaklings. Let's go out there. So we went in the Black Forest. We were initially terrified of wild boars and criminals and witches and werewolves and anything that might be there, because it was a scary place for young boys. But we learned to face our fears, camp out by the fires. We would bring primitive weapons like slings and bolas and bows and arrows, and we learned to tickle trout. Have you ever heard of trout tickling?
No, it
It,
sounds inappropriate, but let's talk about it.
yeah, so it actually works. You don't need a fishing rod or a net to catch fish. In fact, it's
Okay.
so effective that it's against the law in most countries. Even in Canada, it's against the law to catch fish with your hands, which you'd think is crazy. But yeah, we learned to tickle trout, and we fed ourselves from the rivers and creeks by catching them with our bare hands. We ate everything under the sun. Here's a bit of a crazy list. Let's dive into it. Slugs, worms, snails, bees, ants, grasshoppers, mice, birds, squirrels, snakes, lizards, you name it. I've eaten it. And if you're hungry enough in the bush, you join right in, right?
Yeah.
Some of the stuff tastes awful, like frog eggs are nasty. They don't scramble. They taste like hot snot mixed with
Uh,
swamp water. But if you're hungry enough, you'll slurp them down. So yeah,
so this is all from your childhood. You were eating these things?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And now, even as an adult, I continue my creative obsession with what's edible. So I've eaten coyotes and lynx and mountain lions and of course bears. Bears actually taste very good, so they're good eating.
So where were your parents throughout this childhood? Were they not helping you pack a lunch, or what's going on here?
It was a different time, man. I don't know how old you are, but my generation, I grew up with the be good and be home for supper
Yeah,
generation, right?
100%. Yeah.
And parents had no clue what we were up to, right?
Yeah.
So I'd come back with cuts and bruises and bumps, but as long as I wasn't in trouble, they really didn't care.
Yeah.
It was a different world back then, and we just learned stuff the hard way. We roamed everywhere. We'd get lost in the bush and somehow find our way home. And I'd be like, "Mom, Dad, I'm gone for the weekend." They'd be like, "Okay, have fun," and away I went. They had no clue what we were up to, but as long as I stayed alive and didn't break any laws that they knew of,
Yeah.
it was all good.
That's a good bar to set. So then when did you move to Canada?
I was 18. I moved to British Columbia to study fish, wildlife, and recreation management, some forestry, and lived in the BC coast for 6 years and worked in the North Shore Mountains teaching survival programs, nature interpretation. Like, I didn't even know these were real jobs. If someone would have told me you can get paid to teach outdoor skills, I would have been shocked, right?
Yeah.
but I kind of stumbled into that work after graduating. Taught riflery and archery and rock climbing and canoeing, and I was like, this is amazing. Like I can turn my passions into a career.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I worked in British Columbia, met a beautiful woman from Saskatchewan, and so we ended up in Saskatchewan for a number of years. I worked with Saskatchewan Parks and taught survival there, and learned how bloody cold it can get in the prairies, minus 50, and um, studied a lot about winter shelters, quinzees and igloos and snow trenches and snow caves, and taught some of that stuff. I even on television and radio, I'd often get called to be the survival expert if someone died in the bush, and to kind of decipher what they did wrong and what they could have done and this sort of thing. And then I've been in Alberta for the last 21 years in the mountains here in the Northern Rockies, and made a career of it with Alberta Parks. And it's been a beautiful place to raise a family. I still say it's the best kept secret in Canada here.
Yeah, absolutely. So was it your intention when you moved to Canada to, like, were you moving here permanently? Did you know that?
Yeah, I moved by myself. My family stayed in Germany at the time. And for me, Canada was the last wild frontier. I wanted to be in a place where I could get away from the cities. They say the definition of true wilderness is if there's something that can eat you, right? So that's Canada. There's things that can kill you in the bush, and I think that's fantastic. That means we've kept the top predators on the food chain, and it keeps you humble when you're out there to know you're not the most powerful thing in the mountains.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna ask you about that, like the difference between German wilderness and Canadian wilderness. Is it, the animals that are dangerous, or what's the major differences?
Well, certainly population is a big difference. I mean, Germany is a bigger population than Canada, in I think like the quarter size of Alberta. So, and yet they've retained a ton of forest. I think something like a quarter of Germany is still forested land. So you can get that sense of wilderness, but their large predators, their wolves and their bears are long gone. But they do have the wild boars, and they will rip you up pretty good. People die from them regularly and get gored and that sort of thing. They're like tanks with tusks. They're pretty nasty. Um, and I've been attacked by them and had to flee up trees and shoot them
Oh,
with my
really?
slings and that sort of thing. Yeah, yeah, gets your heart pounding in the night.
Yeah, no kidding. So through your career, so you've been more or less educating people for what, 25 years, 30 years?
Yeah, over 30 years.
Over 30 years. So what attracted you to that, as a career? I mean, like, I know that there's a lot of people that are passionate about doing these types of things, but to teach others how to do it, what drew you to that?
Yeah, initially I figured I'd be like a wildlife biologist tranquilizing grizzlies and radio collaring bighorn sheep. That was kind of a vision I had, but I kind of stumbled into this nature education, outdoor ed, and it was just so gratifying. Those aha moments when you teach somebody something new, especially in the wilderness, like foraging and survival skills or rock climbing, and that sense of accomplishment. And it's like they've opened, the doors to Narnia, like a completely new world. And I've received letters from people saying, the program you did changed my life. Like I'm on a completely new course in life. And I think for people who've just been born and raised in a city lifestyle, and they get turned on to the wilderness and nature, and again our instinctual ancestry, it's like this world that's been under the radar for years for them, and it opens up a whole new way of living, which is really exciting,
Yeah.
very gratifying.
What is, like, when you talking, I was lucky enough to get to hike around with you for a day, but what is it specifically about northern Alberta that, like, I'll give you one example. When we were chatting, is you were talking about just the sheer vastness of the area, and you almost seem like I'm not saying you're frustrated, but it's like the idea that you couldn't even begin to see all of it. You know what I mean? There's like this like consistent or this constant like um I don't know, like just you have this almost need to continue just to keep going, keep going. So obviously you're passionate about that, but what is it that struck you with Northern Alberta specifically and just like obviously brought out that passion in you?
Again, yeah, it's just so rugged and wild and untamed and in many ways unexplored. Like the Wilmore Wilderness, just one example, 4,600 square kilometers of mountains and forests. Everybody in North America knows about Banff and Jasper. There's people in Alberta that don't even know the Wilmore exists, and
Yeah.
it has no roads, no official campsites. Like you step in the Wilmore, you've gone back in time to ancient times. Like you're crossing rivers, you're dodging grizzly bears, climbing mountains. I just think it's so amazing that we can still live in a place that's this wild and rugged. I always say there's enough in the Northern Rockies to explore for 2 lifetimes. And even then, I probably wouldn't be able to do it all. I remember climbing a mountain. I was doing a biology study with Alberta Parks, and I was dropped off in the middle of nowhere in the Wilmore on a helicopter. And on my lunch break, there was a peak, a mountain peak. We were in the Alpine, and I just ripped up to the top of this mountain, staring into British Columbia, up in the snow line. And I thought, there is a chance that I might be the only human being that's ever stepped foot right here. And
Yeah.
as much as the indigenous people have been here 10,000, 15,000 plus years, did they step on every mountain peak? Probably not. Like there are places here that are still undiscovered, which is phenomenal, right?
Yeah. And so would you say that is, that is what you're passionate about? Is that the whole idea of like a friend of mine, when the summer starts, he's almost already irritated that there's not enough summer to do all the stuff he wants to do. I feel like you kind of have that same sense of like, as much as I want to get done today, there's just so much I want to get done. It's just like I'll never, so it's almost like this continual frustration, but it's all just based on like just a passion that just like I want to do as much as I can.
Oh, absolutely. It's an obsession, and every
Yeah.
season has its beauty, right? So a lot of people who camp in the summer, they get sad when the snow falls. But for me, I just shift into winter camping, and I'm got snowshoes on and pulled my hot tent out into the bush, and it's just a different season, right? But for me, the obsession with bushcraft projects never end. Like you should see my house; it's full of stuff. And I got so many projects on the go, whether I'm trying to build a bushcraft kayak or a new bow from scratch or flint knapping arrowheads or glue from spruce trees. And I have a list of things I want to do and just never find time for. That's from here to the moon. And, I'm still learning. And that's the beauty of this thing is it's not like you ever arrive. I don't like the name expert or the term. People try to throw that at me. And I'm like, dude, I'm still learning, making mistakes. There's so much to know out there: edible medicinal plants, mushrooms. Like it never ends, and that's
Yeah.
what's so exciting, right?
Well, and there's a friend of mine once corrected me because I ask a lot about people's passions, but she was saying, not everybody has a passion. You clearly have a passion, but the other thing that you have that she was more interested in is curiosity. And
Mm.
so because curiosities can change over time. Every day you can have a new curiosity. Is there a theme or a topic related to wilderness that you're kind of leaning into with curiosity right now?
Oh man, it like I said, it's all over the map. I just need to focus, right? But yeah, I mean, I just think of some recent projects. I finished a new longbow, and I've been making uh, self bows for decades, but I'm still learning new things. And the idea of just being able to take a chunk of wood from the bush, form it into a weapon that can feed me and take down big game, fletch your feathers, flint knap your stone points, straighten the arrows over fire. Uh, man, there's just so much you can learn from just that topic alone. Never
Yeah.
mind basketry and primitive fishing and friction fire, right? Bow drills and hand drills, and like I could ramble on for days and days and days about this stuff because it's just so deep and vast and exciting.
Yeah. Um, as far as mentors go, you said something, iron sharpens iron. And so when you're with your peers, I mean, is it, because like you were saying, you struggle with the idea of being an expert. If you're with people, you're I get a sense you're teaching as much as you're learning. And so is that intentional? Is be around people that are as passionate about you, but you can continue to learn from?
Yeah, I've found over the years, I'm trying to be well-rounded in all these areas, but you'll bump into people, maybe a trapper who can teach you something you didn't know about, game trails, or a hunter or a fisherman or a rock climber. And so you're just hungry for this information. But yeah, there's some of the great people that kind of forged the way have passed on. Morse Kahansky wrote the book, Northern Bushcraft, and he was world renowned Albertan, taught military for years, and he passed away. Tom Roycraft passed away. Lars Falt from Sweden just passed away, I think, last week. Tom Brown from New Jersey. So some of these great mentors of their time, they've moved on, and it's like it's time for us to pick up the torch and run with it, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of this book is I'm not going to be here forever. If I've learned anything, life flies by very quickly.
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm 25 and I'm more than double that age. It goes very quickly. So I'm hoping this book and my passion will be picked up by the next generations.
Nice. So aside from being an author, you're a podcast host, and you're quite active on social media. What was the idea behind the podcast? What is it that you're trying to learn, or you're trying to communicate to people through the podcast?
Yeah, so the podcast is called Wilderness Wavelength. We've only been at it for over a year, but the uptake's been really fun. Last night we were doing a podcast with this old Métis fellow from town, and he was telling us about his adventures. You meet such cool people who've done so many amazing things. We've had grizzly bear experts and polar bear experts, and yeah, this guy told a story last night. I've never heard this tale, and he got stuck in the rib cage of a moose, like Luke Skywalker in the Tauntaun. He was he was butchering a moose, and you got to reach into the rib cage to pull out the heart and lungs. And
Yeah.
moose are huge, like they're gigantic. Um, and the leg kicked back on the moose when he was in there, and he was stuck inside the moose and had to fight his way out. So you meet these colorful characters, and um, I've got my collection of stories, but I keep bumping into people who have their exciting stories, and I think
Yeah.
that's inspiring.
So, and then as far as social media, are these just tools that you've kind of, just said, hey, these are more ways of me getting my stories on, stuff like that? Because social media, I was just on there stalking you earlier, but just kind of fun. Is it something that you took to naturally, or is it something you kind of did begrudgingly, be like, okay, I guess I got to do this to share my knowledge with the world?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm as much as I've got skills in the bush, my technical computer skills suck really
Yeah.
bad. So my kids for years were telling me, Dad, you gotta get on Instagram. I'm like, no, I don't want to. And then I begrudgingly did, and it opened up a whole new world of bushcrafters and wilderness people from around the world. Now I've got this great community, people that you might know from the Alone Show and other famous outdoor people that we chat on the regular, and it's great to see this. So I've had to learn the skills. I'm still not an expert. I have to hand my phone to my kids on the regular and get them to help me through it. But for me, it's just another medium. It's like I'd rather be on a guided hike and be able to teach people. But if I can't do that, a podcast or an Instagram post or a book is the next best thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. just some more. I got some kind of random questions for you, but if someone was coming, let's just say transplanted from Toronto, had never been in the wilderness before, what's the most important survival skill that they need to know?
Well, we talk about the survival priorities, and they generally are shelter, water, fire, food in that order. In a severe blizzard, you might only live 3 hours without a good shelter. Water, you've got 3 days in the bush. Fire is, it's necessary for just about everything, including warmth and rescue, purifying water. And finally, food, you've got about 3 weeks. So in that order, start learning those skills. So start with shelter because that's number one. And then learn how to get water, and then learn how to do fire, and then food. The other thing I tell people, the two things you should always have on your body at all times in the great outdoors is a good knife and a lighter.
Yeah.
And that I have a friend who would have died had he not had a lighter in his pocket. He got lost on a hunting trip. It can be the difference between life and death. Now, there's more things you can carry, but at very least, always have a knife and a lighter with you. If you've got fire, you've got warmth, you've got signaling. If you got a knife, you can do just about anything once you learn the skills, right?
Yeah. When you come home from a trip, um, like I don't know, what are you craving? McDonald's? What's the one thing that you're done eating frog eggs or whatever the hell you're
Yeah,
eating?
yeah.
What are you craving when you get home typically?
I always say in the bush, you start very quickly craving stuff that's super salty, and you start craving stuff that's super sweet. So I've learned on backcountry trips, take some candies, chocolate bars. You'll be fighting each other for those things, and some really salty jerky or salty broth. There's something in your body that needs that, right? So if you didn't get enough of that, you want to come back. You want some real greasy, salty Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? That's or a good burger. It's just a craving that you have. So yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
I love that. Um, so I'll say when your book becomes a movie, who do you think's gonna play you in the movie? Are you looking for Brad Pitt, or who are you
I,
looking for?
I'm not
Owen
handsome.
Wilson would
I'm
be a
not
good.
handsome enough for Brad Pitt. I have been mistaken for Edward Norton many times, or Liam Neeson, neither of who look super great. If they're listening, I'm sorry, you guys, you're past your prime.
Yeah,
But yeah, Edward Norton could probably play me, and he'd be a good stand-in. We
yeah,
look pretty similar.
I like that. Um, you've met. Okay, so you were how old when you moved from Germany?
18.
Uh, Did you lose your accent quickly? Because you have no hint of a German accent.
If you want, I can speak with a German accent. Um, no, my dad's German, mom's Canadian from Provost, Alberta. So the old saying, your mother tongue is what we spoke in the home. And
Oh,
dad's a
okay.
linguist. He could speak 7 or 8 languages. So it didn't matter to him if it was French or German or Swedish. He was good to go. So yeah, we spoke English in the home, and both passports, German and Canadian, and that was my upbringing.
Can I ask you a question? It might be controversial. I did ask you when we were on the hike, but we didn't include any of the footage because we didn't want to get you in trouble. But I'll get you in trouble in the podcast. Does
Sure.
Bigfoot exist? I mean, if anyone would know, it would be you. You've been out there, so
uh, yeah, I'm probably going to offend some people, but as much as I wish Bigfoot existed, I have studied Bigfoot extensively. I've even did a program on Bigfoot, so I really researched the stuff to death. I don't believe Bigfoot exists. There could have been a giant ape in North American history. We had lions and camels and giant sloths, so who knows? And maybe some of the tales that are out there from folklore come from a time when we did have these giant apes on the continent. That would be really cool. However, the fossil record here doesn't show that. There was a giant orangutan on other parts of the world that is very much measures the size of a Bigfoot, sort of that 10-foot height. So there were huge apes in history. Now, why do I say they're not in North America now? Very quickly, I'll give you a couple good reasons. Number one, we've got wildlife cameras everywhere, and I use them. We use them with the government. We've seen wolverines and fishers and martens and rare critters. We've never seen a Bigfoot. Um, Although I've wanted to put on a Bigfoot costume and walk past them and see what that would do. Um, the other thing is cougar hounds. Are you familiar with cougar hounds?
No, no.
Okay, so cougars are so stealthy. Let's say one of them is eating dogs in the neighborhood, and we just had a problem here in my town recently. Um, they're really hard to catch. They're just so smart and fast. So you bring in the hounds, and they'll tree that cougar. They'll smell the trail, track it down. So here's the thing: if hounds can tree a cat that's super stealthy, but they can't corner a 10-foot tall stinky ape.
Yeah,
I'm puzzled by that. I'm like, if someone finds a fresh Bigfoot footprint, let's bring in the hounds. They'll find that critter. Like they'll smell it.
yeah,
Bloodhounds. They'll track it across far reaches. So the cameras, the hounds, um, we never see Bigfoot roadkill, and people are like, well, they're too smart. I'm like, humans get hit by cars, right? Everything gets hit by cars. And we don't find full skeletons out there or skulls, and I've found skulls of everything. And the other thing, my last thing I'll say, if you overlap where Bigfoot has been seen on the continent with where black bears are,
yeah,
it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So I think most of what people are seeing mistaking for Bigfoot are black bears standing on their hind legs. They can even walk on their hind legs, and they look very human-like.
huh?
I did hear a screech though in the forest that had my hair standing on end. I was with a buddy. We still don't know what it was. We were in the middle of nowhere on a hunting trip, sitting around a fire. This was only last year. We laugh and say it was the Wendigo, which is another mythical beast, but this thing was a horrifying scream. The only thing I think it could have been was a mountain lion or a lynx, but it had us clutching our rifles very quickly because it was close and it was horrifying. So there are weird things you hear. People say Bigfoot will sometimes do tree knocking. So if you hear knocking in the bush, that it's a Bigfoot. But
Yeah.
I'd
So
love to be proven wrong. It'd be cool
yeah,
if they were out there. Yeah.
absolutely. It was cool because when you were kind of putting that evidence forward, it's kind of the most compelling. Everything you say just it makes a lot of sense. And if someone is going to see someone like Bigfoot, I would have to imagine it's going to be someone like you that spends every waking minute that he possibly can in the forest. So, I was kind of hoping that you were going to be like, oh yeah, 100% Bigfoot exists, but I guess you're a realist. You mentioned you have 6 kids, is that right?
Yeah.
And have they all kind of, on some level, kind of followed in your footsteps?
Yeah, they're wildfire fighters, foresters. They love the great outdoors. Two of them were here recently. I mean, they grew up on wild game meat, so that's what they want. So I help them get a couple deer, and they bring it back, and it's wonderful to see these skills passed on. They all love to rock climb, and they've gone on to do cooler things than I've ever done, and that's what you hope for your kids. Um, it's funny though, my sense of risk as you grow older, now I'm scared that they're gonna, fall to their death on some mountain trip. So the fears I never had for myself, I have for my kids, and it's funny how that changes. So I'm like, remember, gravity never sleeps.
Yeah,
Gravity
yeah,
has no mercy. Like,
yeah.
yeah, I do worry about them out there, but I have my own scars and bumps and bruises from things that happen to me.
So that must make you. I mean, you have a lot to look back and kind of be proud of. But I would think I have 2 kids myself. The idea that they've kind of taken the lessons that you've taught them and embrace that lifestyle, that must be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very gratifying, and I hope it just continues. Right, I've got a grandchild now, and I taught him how to shoot the old David and Goliath sling. He's pretty good He's only 5 years old, and he's been picking mushrooms with me for forever. He's done stuff at age 5 that most adults have never done. I've had him winter camping out in tents and stuff, and so yeah, you just got to keep passing on the skills to your kids. And
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a sad world if people stop being connected to nature. We have this saying, you only protect what you love. So if people don't love the mountains and the forests and these special places, we're going to stop protecting them. So it's really important to the survival of wildlife, of parks, of these great out places in the great outdoors. But we've got to keep people turned on to nature to make it happen.
100%. And that's, for us, one of the ideas and the reasons we wanted to go to Hinton specifically is, we have so many places in Alberta that are so unique and so special, but at the same time, we drive right through them to get to, places like Jasper. And no disrespect to Jasper, I spent a lot of time there for work, and I love the place. But it's, these places like Hinton, that have so much to offer people in such a unique kind of, um, a unique wilderness that, just not a lot of people have experienced. So our purpose with the Après destination videos was to really put a spotlight on that. And I think, yeah, you just kind of taking the time to be with us for the day, I think helped us with that for sure.
Yeah, there's a freedom out here that you can't find anywhere else, really. And I do love the national parks, but you can't do anything you want in a national park, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so, and for obvious reasons, they need their regulations to protect it. But there's a freedom on the public land here that is just amazing. Like for me, just to head out in the bush, have a fire, a lean-to, and to roam the land is just amazing that we can do that in a place like Alberta.
yeah.
It's fantastic, and I hope that never changes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to thank you. I'm excited. Like I said, I ordered your book a little while ago, and it's on its way to my house. So I'm excited to read that. But yeah, just your passion. Like I said, everybody that when we were talking to people that we were going to be able to spend a day with you, you have a very good reputation in the town, so everyone knows how passionate you are, and the idea that you were able to write that book and kind of bring that passion, kind of spread it out, to even more people, I think is awesome. So thanks for everything you do.
Well, thank you. And, the invitation is to come back. We just scratched the surface. So if you want more wilderness adventure, let's do it.
When you and I were talking about rock climbing, so we have a really good rock climbing center very close to my house. So kind of motivated me to be like, I have a buddy that keeps bugging me to do it. So yeah, I would absolutely love to come back and see more of what you got. I actually, the day after you and I met up, I got to go mountain biking in the area too. So there's so much in the area that obviously a lot of people do know about, but there's a lot of people that don't. So yeah, I'd love to come back and explore more for sure.
Yeah, so many best kept secrets here. Yeah, when I saw your tall, lanky frame similar to myself, it was like I wished, like I got turned on to rock climbing mostly around age 18, and it was like, oh my goodness, like I was born to do this with my spider frame. And tall, lanky guys, we're not going to be top of the football team, but you get that's that strength to weight ratio. And man, once I was on the rock for the first time, I was like, I was born to do this, and it was very exciting. I'm getting older, so it's getting harder, but at one time it was a way just to explore the mountains and
Yeah.
push yourself. So I'm hoping you get to enjoy that same thrill.
Absolutely. And yeah, one thing that you just obviously are so good at, and is just introducing people to the outdoors and making people feel welcome, because I think some people are intimidated by it. And so just knowing that there's avenues where people can learn more about it. And to your point, when we first started talking, is there's something in that's very natural about it. So once people do experience the wilderness, there's a part of their I don't know if you want to call it genetic makeup or whatever, that's attracted to it, that's drawn to it. So people like yourself are very good at welcoming people in, and then once they experience it, I think it's something that can change their lives.
Yeah, pretty much you just have to lead them to the great outdoors and let their curiosity and the landscape do the rest. Like I said from the beginning, I do think these instincts are in all of us. And when people say they're afraid of nature or don't like it, I'm like, you just need to be introduced properly and you will fall in love with this. Because, even if you are in a city, you are being sustained by nature. It's a facade that you're not connected to the land. You're just a few steps away.
Yeah,
But
100%.
your food, your water, the air you breathe, it's all comes back to nature and this planet. Now I'm sounding super philosophical, but it's true, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, thank you very much, Scott, for taking the time. And I will I'll bug you next summer. And although I should kind of grow some courage and bug you in the winter time or something, do some winter camping or something like that. That sounds a little hardcore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's head out again and take it a step further.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much for listening to the Create Podcast. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. See you next Wednesday.